Welcome to Earth's Mightiest Weirdos. Gentlemen, how are you doing tonight?
Good. Good to be here.
Good. We're doing a little bit of a different format this week to accommodate everybody's schedule. So we're going to be reviewing the Falcon and Winter Soldier episode 4, which is entitled The World is Watching. We're doing this in a private YouTube video, so the world is not exactly watching until we publish this for the world on Monday night, I believe. Is that correct, Mark?
That is correct.
Perfect.
So I just got the irony of that the world is literally not watching us tonight.
That's okay, because the world can come back and find us wherever you find your podcast or on YouTube Monday night. For the first time, I think, since we've officially had Earth's Mightiest Weirdos with our cartoonish faces and everything, we've got all 4 of the Earth's Mightiest Weirdos, plus an additional one, Mr. Duane Willie. How you doing tonight, Duane?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, guys. It's going to be fun.
Good to see you. Mark, how are you doing? To Markie Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. We had Avengers Campus, we had Falcon and Winter Soldier, so it's a good week for Marvel.
Stealing a little thunder from us. Ethan, how are you doing? The wolf of Main Street himself.
I'm good. I'm glad to be back. I feel like
it's so good to see you.
I feel like I've missed you guys. I always enjoy giving my perspective of these shows and episodes, so it'll be a lot of fun. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited for the conversation because I know you're not as high on this show definitely than you were on WandaVision, so I'm curious to get into it. And then man in the San Francisco Baymax t-shirt there himself, Mark Valentine. How you doing, Mark?
Ba-la-la-la-la. I'm doing very well. So for those of you that are watching us right now on YouTube, my apologies. I'm getting an error message here in StreamYard that says we're sorry that YouTube does not support comments in private videos. So for those of you, you notice that I'm chatting on the separate computer here to engage you. Let me know your comments as you're watching, and then I will read them live to everyone here on air. My apologies, guys, that I can't pull them up for the video version of this, but I will be the man with the plan here that I'm going to be watching my screen on the left to pull up any of your comments. Type them in the comments that you see on the screen, and then I'm going to read them live on air for Bryan.
We do have a few VIPs that did join the event tonight. If you didn't get the VIP invite, make sure you're part of This Diz Life podcast Facebook group so you can get those types of invites, and a lot more information on that coming in the future. But first and foremost, Markie Mark alluded to it. Before we get into Falcon and Winter Soldier, gentlemen, we got a gigantic Disney Parks announcement this week. Avengers Campus, as represented on Markie Mark's t-shirt, officially opens on June 4th, 2022 at Disney's California Adventure. Has anybody not been to Disneyland in this panel? Ethan, Duane, Mark. I'm the only one that's been to Disneyland.
You're it, man.
Oh,
You're it.
Wow.
That's insane, especially for this group of people. That's insane. So it's replacing the Bugs Land out there. It's going to be a great addition to the Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout that is already out there. Some of the pictures we got of that Quinjet, the Avengers building with the Guardians Tower behind, oh man. Cool. So it's going to open up in 2 phases still. The Avengers attraction's not ready, but the web. So we say it's MCU news. It's not really MCU news. They're not canonizing the land. It's just a tribute to the land. It's not part of any particular storyline, which I like. With Galaxy's Edge, they made it a part of the storyline, which kind of boxes it in for being able to grow and breathe. And so Avengers Campus is not part of the storyline, but we are going to have Tom Holland's Spider-Man back. If you watch the Imagineering story, you've seen the Spider-Man animatronic that swings. Yeah. There's a lot of cool stuff. I'm most excited about, the PIM test kitchen. I know if you've ever listened to United We Fan, I don't eat a lot, but that stuff looks really, really cool. And then the Doctor Strange nighttime, specifically going at nighttime to see that magic show. That's going to be really cool. Is there anything anybody else is excited about Avengers Campus?
Having never been to Disneyland, yes.
Just all of it?
All of it, yeah.
All of it. Seeing it, yeah.
It's going to border right up against Cars Land, too, so you can knock them both out right away. Go ahead, Markie Mark.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. The whole Build-A-Droid experience at Galaxy's Edge, it's really cool, but it was never really for me. But I tell you what, the Build a Spider Droid,
yeah,
man, I'll probably even buy the darn backpack to carry it in. Good Lord.
Yeah.
So Bryan, sorry, man. So to catch up with Facebook, And again, we're having a little bit of an issue. We're trying to make this really interactive for our VIPs. But Patrick Walsh says, R.I.P. Heimlich's Choo Choo Train.
Yeah.
As a non-Disneyland guy, I'm assuming that has some significance.
I'd love to
Just
hear
picture
Frankie's thoughts on that.
Picture the slowest train possible and have it shaped like Heimlich eating a leaf, and then it just goes in a circle. It was the dumbest, wonderful thing ever.
And Frankie's all about it. Frankie's in the chat saying he's been to Disneyland. So right now we have Patrick. We have Patrick Walsh. Frankie is with us, and Esther Jones is hanging out with us as VIPs tonight. So
hi, Esther.
Perfect.
That's who we've got hanging out with us.
Perfect. Hopefully we have a few more join. I know a couple other people got the link as well. But gentlemen, let's move into it. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The world is watching. So overall thoughts on the episode. Let's start with Ethan. I'm very interested to see what Ethan has to say about this show, so he doesn't sugarcoat any of it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try not to sugarcoat it because I have not been the biggest advocate or fan of this show. I wasn't here last week to give my full thoughts on last week's episode, but I'll keep it to really minimum dialogue, which I think they need to take a little bit of a hint or a cue from. I just haven't been able to care too much about these characters from a perspective of I cared about them in Infinity War, Civil War. I cared about them. I wanted to know more about them. And now that I do, I guess I just don't really care as much as I thought that I would.
So you wish you only had the first date and not a second date with them.
Yeah. The first date was kind of nice.
Interesting. The characters I cared about, they're giving me plenty more to care about, but I can see what you're saying about I am out on Carly Morgenthau. I'm out, man. She isn't catching me. Mark Valentine, you were not enjoying what Ethan was saying.
Dude, I think I worked in reverse with this. That I said, it was in our first week that I said Sam I felt was very underrepresented in the MCU prior to it. I never really felt connected with Sam as a character. This has made me absolutely love him. Give that man the shield now. I apologize, Sam. I was wrong. I wanted Bucky to hold the shield first, and I was 100% wrong. Sam needs that shield in his hands. I love him. I've said this 900 times too. Get a lightsaber in the hand of Sebastian Stan.
This is not Babu's freaking podcast.
I know, but I just love Sebastian Stan so much, and we'll talk about it in a minute. But that opening, Ethan, that opening sequence when he's getting deprogrammed. How do you tell me you don't care about him anymore?
That's my favorite scene of the entire series.
That scene was incredible. Watching the flashback. Man.
So I have to ask, and I want to discuss this now while we're on the topic. What has happened in this show that has gotten you to the point where you didn't want Sam over Bucky? Now you want Sam over Bucky. There hasn't been anything from Sam yet other than that opening action sequence.
Seeing Sam's temperament, getting his backstory, seeing his life with his sister, seeing the struggle, seeing the hardship, the juxtaposition of him set with Isaiah, realizing from that perspective of, and even feeling somewhat guilty and self-guilting myself that I didn't know if I saw him as a Captain America. And some of that was also very much rooted with me in the comics of knowing that Bucky was the next guy and the successor, loving Sebastian Stan. But more of that was just feeling like Sam was, again, just really underrepresented in the MCU prior. Now that I've gotten to see him, see his personality, see his struggle, see his life, see his temperament, and then going back and watching the first Avenger, seeing the scene prior to Steve Rogers becoming a super and talking about the man and saying don't lose who you are. And then realizing that Sam has the right temperament. It's why he was given the shield. It wasn't because of the relationship that he had, and it was more about he was the right guy to take the shield over. And even that little sequence, we'll get into this later, where Zemo says, have you been offered the serum? No. If you were offered it, would you take it? No. No hesitation.
Which is exactly the opposite of what even Lamar Hoskins said. Yeah,
Correct.
We'll get into that.
Those
Mark. Oh,
I was
sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say those character traits and the character development that Sam has gotten, his quiet, humble leadership has really made me come around on him as he is the appropriate man to don the shield. He will bring honor back to that shield because the shield is stained. That's why.
Quite literally. Markie Mark, I think you said this could be your favorite episode. You said that in our private chat. I still think I give the edge to episode 2. This episode's really, really good, though.
I just liked it a lot, the different emotions of it. And then I know I brought up in an earlier episode how I wanted to know what happened to that Sam that did the group counseling sessions from Winter Soldier, and we got to see it. We got to see why he's a leader on the sidelines and on the field. And I loved every minute of that scene. I knew that John Walker was going to ruin that. And I was just like, no, don't ruin this moment. Because it was also a chance for me to try to like Carly. Carly, was it Carly? How do you say that? Morgenthau. Thank you. Morgenthau, Thor, whatever.
They say it both ways on the show. It doesn't matter.
I know. It's not a Kevin Feige phage me time again. But I want to like her character. I want to like her. I was unfortunately that character when I watched Solo, when her big reveal came, and I'm like, I feel like this is a moment, but I am not getting what this moment is happening right now. So
I was paying a lot more attention to Warwick Davis in the same scene.
Oh, so I'm trying to get into her in this show. It's just not working. Even Sharon Carter hasn't quite grabbed me yet.
Just call her the power broker. It is a done deal.
Listen, let's face it. We would all like Sharon Carter to grab us a little bit more than she is.
Bryan. Anyways, this isn't.
The views reflected in this podcast do not reflect everybody on this show. Holy cow, that was aggressive.
I think the show, each episode grabs me more and more. Zemo, I loved seeing him in Civil War, and I'm glad that this show is giving us more to him, more than just a guy who tilts his head and says some really smart things. Thank you, Sam, for calling him out for that. Bryan, look at that. Oh, my God.
I get the Zemo cut, man.
They gave
us the Zemo cut last week.
Zemo cut. Look at that. DC inspiring so many different cuts for things. But, yeah, the last episode, it went from probably the weakest episode to, I got to think about it, but, yeah, going from the weakest episode to my favorite episode, almost. Yeah,
they didn't change a ton from their tactics from last week to this week. It was a lot of dialogue in both episodes. Mm-hmm. This episode was a lot better thought out, in my opinion. Duane, our special guest, what'd you think of it? I think you're probably the resident with the most views. That's my guess.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed this episode. I'm with you, Markie Mark. I think this is probably my favorite episode. Again, kind of close, but this one, I actually liked some of the dialogue. That same scene that you were talking about with Sam and Carly, I really liked that scene. I knew, we all knew it was going to happen. The new Cap was going to run in, but I enjoyed that whole scene, even prior to the two of them talking when she's doing the monologue, basically, the eulogy, and then the two of them talking. I enjoyed that a lot. I really liked the scene we talked about a little bit ago where Zemo and Sam are talking, and I completely agree that now, and exactly for the same reasons that Mark was saying, I can see Sam holding the shield because of the virtue that's in Sam, the person that he is. And that's why he deserves the shield. That being said, I also completely love Bucky, White Wolf, whatever
Yeah.
you want to call him, you know, and I'm all in on Bucky, and I think that this has been it's been a really cool episode, or not just episode, but a whole series for him. But this episode, I think you see a couple of different sides of him, and I like that.
So Duane, let's get into the episode now. Let's start right there with you talking about Bucky. Bucky is free. We start in Wakanda. Bucky and Io, as I said, my favorite scene of the series by quite a bit so far.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. Immediately when they go, you know, that we're going 6 years back and we're going to Wakanda, I was like, rock on. I needed to see this.
With the soundtrack and everything.
Yeah, it was something that we all needed to see. And when, you know, he's sitting there, you know, and the fire's going and Io's talking to him, and you know, the tears start to run down his face, you know, and he's like, it's not going to work, you know, and just that emotions of all of that as she's calling out the code words. I just thought that scene was intense, you
powerful.
know,
Yeah.
and it was so powerful to see that. And then to see, there was like a moment right after he realizes, and she says, you know, you are free. Where you know, the tears are running down his face, and it was almost like a cry and a chuckle, you know, like
she says freight car, and the realization sets in that he didn't fall into it. It was
awesome.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
Excellent. Mark Valentine, go ahead.
So listen, everything that he just said, absolutely. So let me use this second to get caught up a little bit with the audience. Frankie said Sebastian Stan's intensity in that opening scene was incredible. You could see the relief in his face in that he's now completely free from Hydra's control. That was it. So Frank, just like Frankie and Duane just said, the way that Sebastian Stan performed in that scene, combined with the music and the imagery from the prior films, and then the cry that then organically went into a laugh when when the weight was lifted, that he realized no longer is he going to respond with, like, you know, ready to comply. He is not the Winter Soldier anymore. Like, the programming is broken. It was a beautiful scene. It was a really great redemption for him. It was a great place to see his character go. And it was obviously a flashback to his time spent in Wakanda as the White Wolf. Really, really great stuff. It's again, what Mark and I talked about all the time. For people who say that these shows are just carnivals or they're just spectacles, dude, go and watch that scene. Look at the scene work. Look at the acting that takes place there. And I respectfully disagree with you, Mr. Scorsese. These movies have really great, genuine scene work that's being done in them. I'm sorry that if it doesn't fit your sort of definition of fine cinema, but
he called them amusement parks.
Yeah,
I think that's the term he used.
That was my
score and everything.
Yeah, that was my favorite scene of the series thus far, and that's why, Ethan, I respectfully disagree. Those are the kind of scenes that make me care about these characters more than I ever did.
Did this land with you, Ethan?
Yeah, no, it did, and I don't want to have my initial thoughts be like that.
No, you're good. You're good.
Hate the series. I don't dislike it, and I definitely enjoyed the scene. I thought that it was a great storytelling piece. I thought it was a great way to figure out and learn a little bit about what he was doing in Wakanda for all that time, and I found it really empowering that, you know, the woman was like ready to take on anything that could have come. I thought that was really pretty cool to see.
We find out quite later that she's quite capable of handling that,
in any way, shape,
especially
or form.
when he only has one arm.
Yeah. No, it definitely hit me. I could definitely, you know, feel the emotion that was coming out of Sebastian Stan in this scene, and I think the other thing too that I just struggle with here with this series is I just haven't had that moment where I'm latched on. Like there's something that's dragging me in. I just feel like I'm continually getting lost or something's happening, and there's just too much dialogue maybe for me to really grasp onto things. But this scene was definitely a good one for sure.
Markie Mark, anything that you thought that hasn't been said yet?
I think that scene was one of the most powerful scenes we've seen in the MCU. And it wasn't even that long. Like, I think that was the great thing about it. And he didn't even have to say much. It was just in his reactions and his words. But did anyone else kind of get a little flirt vibe right in the beginning? She kind of, man.
I have another friend who said that too. I didn't pick up on that, but you're not the literal only one.
It's in the beginning, right before she starts, and she's like, I won't let that. Like, she gave him a look, and then like I thought she did like a little lip press, and like right away I was like, are you hitting on him? Like right before this campfire moment? All right. And then just the moments between them when they're in the streets. I know people are probably going to be like, doesn't it have that, like, just because like they don't have to have a relationship like that. They could just be mutual respect. But I feel like there were different points where she was disappointed in him in a way, not just a friend kind of disappointed in his actions, but kind of in a romantic way. So I think there's something there. And, you know, maybe the White Wolf makes her go Wakanda forever, you know, who knows? But just, anyways, getting back to the scene, I think
Thank God we're private tonight. That's all I'm gonna say.
I know. I think it's a great scene, and it started it off. It started everything off right there, and I'm glad we had it. I think had this been a movie, I don't know if we would have had that scene. And there's so many times during the show that I'm like, oh man, well, we've had that moment, or would they have just summed it up with a couple of lines? So I'm glad we had that scene.
There's nothing that hasn't been said about the campfire scene specifically, so I want to talk about them in the street real fast. They give you a storyline reason as to why it's Io showing up and not just bringing in Denai Guerrera or Shuri or anybody, Okoye, nobody like that. It's you're bringing in Io because she has this relationship with Bucky. She's not happy that he busted Zemo out, but she's ending up willing to trust him and give him 8 hours. We see that they're very capable. They don't have to give him any time whatsoever. She's giving him 8 hours to get what he needs to done. And she calls him the White Wolf. There's that mutual respect. So when she calls him James later on, it cuts deep. The pure joy that he has when he's free is he gets that look on his face in the exact opposite when she calls him James later on, when his arm falls off. We'll talk about that scene. But moving on, we get a little bit more just real quick dialogue that I don't want to spend a lot of time on, but we check in with the Flag Smashers. They're talking about the Patch Act, which is going to speed up the reestablishment of borders and trying to get the world back to everything that it needed to. And Sam talked a lot in this episode specifically about something I'd never considered of these people that had been refugees or poor or anything before this. They've now been invited to these countries to simply build up the economies and build up the communities back then. And then when everybody else shows back up, they just get kicked to the curb. And the Patch Act is trying to speed that up. So you can see a lot of that empathy and sympathy that Sam has for the Flag Smashers. And that's really, really interesting. Markie Mark, did you have something there?
I mean,
it just looked like you leaned in. If you don't have anything, that's fine.
No. I loved everything about the scene with Sam and trying to show that there's two sides to every story. I mean, even Steve Rogers said it when they were talking about Wanda and Quicksilver there in Age of Ultron.
What kind of crazy person would allow a German scientist to perform experiments on him?
So I loved that they reminded people that, you know, don't look at something face value. So I loved that scenes.
Moving on to our next topic.
I brought my Turkish delight.
So, Mark, if you can do me a favor, make sure we're not missing much in the comments section.
We're good. We got Perfect. Really quiet for a second, guys. Again, if you have any questions or just general comments, VIPs, hit us up in the comment section. Let us know. We want to get your viewpoints on air, and we want to discuss or even debate. If you don't like one of our takes, please let us know.
So we spend the next few minutes hashing out who Donya Madani is, something that, in my opinion, we should have hashed out last week. I think that was one of the biggest misses of last week's episode of trying to hash out this character that tries to give Carly some sort of empathetic moment, the one that could be Carly's moral compass. We get Zemo singing Baba Black Sheep, which is terrifying, just absolutely terrifying. But finding out and just everybody kind of fleeing the room. Ethan, was there anything about this Donya Madani and chasing her down that didn't work for you or did?
Not necessarily. I mean, Zemo in and of itself is such an interesting character. I think he's probably the one that I've sort of shifted my attention towards, if that makes sense.
He's been so good.
He
been
really
great.
has. He has a certain like aura about him as when he enters a room. The classic like three of them walking into anything is, I don't know, it's a little bit much almost for me. I think it's a little overdone at this point, but
it's like Entourage.
Yeah,
I loved watching them walk down the street though. That was cool.
Slow-mo, it's like
but Zemo's coat game is always on point.
Yes, so. That is very true. But no, this particular scene didn't do like a whole lot for me. But I will say that of the characters that we're watching right now, Zemo has been the one that I've been very intrigued by. I remember him from the previous film. So he's been really fun to watch.
I think it's scenes like this that kind of have dragged the show down just a little bit for me. We didn't need to see Sam go into 6 rooms and have everybody evacuate. We could have just done that in 1 room and kind of sped up the scene a little bit.
Right.
Because the important part in what's Zemo's end game here, no pun intended, but to tell that girl that he's just playing everything so close to the vest, just his information. Mark Valentine, anything that stood out to you here?
I love the way he used his information as leverage. He's using we'll talk about this later. I think he's got something in his possession that he's going to use as leverage again later. It was really creepy. Frankie's saying they're saying that Baba Black Sheep was picked intentionally. Really creepy. The only thing missing from that scene was like the white van. That he was like he was a creeper in that scene. And it
Frankie,
also
if you can expand on that, Frankie, I'm curious what you mean exactly. Why it was intentional.
It also reminds you that while we like him at times and like we laugh and we love the Zemo cut, he still very much is a despicable person. He's a villain. So that scene with him singing Baba Black Sheep and almost extorting the children to get the information that he desires reminds us Zemo will stop at nothing to accomplish his goal and his intended, the outcome that he wants. He will see it through. He'll do anything he can. He'll shoot a man in the head. And that was like, let's not gloss over that. That like Sam's like, right. You shot him, and he starts to parse words. Go ahead, Mark.
He may or may not, whatever legality, he may or may not have.
Man, Despicable's harsh. I love him. Duane, anything standing out to you here? The Turkish Delight candy. How did the Turkish Delight candy not fall through that handle in the scene?
I thought that same thing too. When he dumped it out, why none of it fell through? But I just thought it was really cool. Again, he steals that whole scene. Obviously that scene. Because the rest of it, like you said, could have been done in 3 seconds. But he's the main part of that scene. And I also found it interesting, when he's like, hey, you see those guys over there, don't trust them. They're bad guys, and then gives them all the candy and gets the information and goes on. I'm like Mark. I feel like he has leverage in one way or the other.
He's 3 steps ahead of everybody.
He's always got the next move. Exactly. He's always got leverage. He's always got an idea. He always knows what's going to happen next, so I really enjoy that. I like that.
He's fun. Yeah. So let's move on to our next topic here. I believe. Yeah. So we see an interesting conversation between Carly and another Flag Smasher. Says today's heroes don't have the luxury of keeping their hands clean. That's how they're viewing the Shield, like them having a conversation of kind of idolizing Steve Rogers and Captain America was really, really interesting. But today's heroes don't have the luxury of keeping their hands clean. That's not the right mentality. Like, and it seems to be that John Walker subscribes to that theory as well. Sam doesn't subscribe to that theory. Sam, and this is what was so great about the prison break scene last week is Bucky does what needs to be necessary. He still views Sam as Captain America. Captain America can't be seen busting somebody out of jail. Like, Sam had nothing to do with that. Sam's kind of keeping his hands clean because he's got Bucky willing to take that extra step. But this was just really interesting to me. But Carly Morgenthau being the next Captain America, no thanks, man. Like, I mean, she's drastic, and that's kind of the point. She's another version of John Walker, but
well, luckily that philosophy got stomped out of the world, literally,
fairly quickly.
The only one that had that sentiment is now gone. We don't have to worry about Carly being a fanned over anymore.
Fair enough. Well, moving on to the next topic. Again, not to spend a ton of time on more dialogue, but we get into, and we're going to start with Markie Mark. You talked a lot about this scene already. There was a couple things about the scene that didn't personally land with me. I do like that Sam slowly walked in. They meet John Walker and Lamar Hoskins in the street. They go in, they slowly walk in, and Carly recognizes that Sam's not barging in like others would. But she keeps looking up at Sam. How does nobody else in this funeral service even like follow her eye gaze? Like, I don't know, whatever. But I like Sam's approach with everything. So Markie Mark, you talked about this scene and kind of why it landed with you. What did you enjoy about it?
Did anyone else, you brought up John Walker and them walking in the streets. Did anyone else, when they see him with the shield walking in the street, it kind of looks like a kid wearing a Halloween costume, but
especially without his helmet.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like, it took me out of the moment when I watched it, the first viewing, and then especially the second viewing. I'm like, you look like a cosplayer. And nothing against cosplayers. I love cosplayers. I hope someone even writes a musical one day out there called A Cosplayer Story. I think it'd be great. But
we should write that. That could be a good podcast promo.
Cosplayer, the musical. Mark Valentin.
I'll star in it.
There you go. But anyways, God, it just took me out of the moment and made me just realize I don't see him as captain. But anyways, going back to the topic, their dialogue needed to happen. We needed to show that Sam is not just about throwing fists and clever remarks. He can talk to you. He can help solve world problems with his words. That's what makes him a good man, is that he can do that. And it didn't even, there's something calming about him. Mm-hmm. Right away, she was like, all right, let's do this. Let's talk. And he even got her kind of realizing some of her like initial responses weren't the best thoughts to have. Mm-hmm. And she was like,
you tricked me into saying that. Yeah.
You're trying to trick me. And he's like he gave that mom look of, did I?
Yeah. But you said it. Yeah.
You said it. I didn't do anything.
It's legitimately Sam's superhero or his superpower. Like he's a negotiator.
I would have loved to have seen, he planted a seed. Obviously, we see it later in the episode that he planted a seed. She knows he's a good man, even though John Walker tried to derail all that, but she knows he's a good man. And I think that scene was great to show that he can help save problems with his words. And we were reminded of that's how we first met him. Like, obviously we saw him running. Don't go too literal with me. But our first real scene with him was in that group meeting session. We got to see him.
Yep.
Ethan, you talk about a lot of dialogue in this show. Did this one work for you?
Again, not really.
Ethan.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna probably have like a really hot take here. You guys are talking a lot about how Sam should be Captain America and he's the leader, and I just have not gotten that like real sense.
For those not watching as a VIP, we have the hot take imaging on the screen.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just don't.
I'm just so confused because you watched WandaVision, which was full of dialogue and expositions and like so much dialogue, and I'm just trying to figure out why that worked.
I was much more captivated than I was with this. This just drags, and the dialogue drags. I thought this would maybe be more.
You don't have to
action-packed.
apologize, man. Everybody's got their own
But,
thing.
but no,
We're all
the
friends
real-
here.
The real hot take here is I can't see Sam as Captain America right now. I just can't.
Well, he's not yet, so that's good.
I know, but I don't even know if he's got the capability of being that guy.
Oh.
I don't get that sense. I don't get that feeling. I don't get that type of like rush. He's a great negotiator. He's a great talker. He's a great like explainer of feelings and things of that nature. But when it comes to actually leading into action, when it comes to putting a plan together in place or telling people what needs to get done, I don't get that vibe from him that he's going to be able to really do that. And to the best of his capability, he to me sort of seems like the person who wants to do it on his own and hope that it works. I haven't gotten the feeling that he can do that in a collaborative sense, much like in a smaller, not as grand scale as Avengers Assemble or something like that. But yeah, I just
Ethan,
I haven't gotten that.
So you don't see.
Ethan, look down at me. Let me ask you something.
Yes.
Were you hoping this show
It's
would
a
be more
story
action
about a man named
oriented,
Markie.
or were you open to it, or were you hoping for more action based shows?
I was hoping for more action based, but I went into it with absolutely like no.
Were you
real
looking for a Michael
expectation.
Bay movie? Was that what you were looking
No,
for?
not even that.
Shots fired.
I wasn't even hoping for that. I just have not been captivated by the show like I thought that I would, and it's been for me really disappointing.
I think these next two episodes are gonna change that. But so what you're saying is you're like the cop in Avengers, and jumping all the way back to phase 1 of Steve says we need to do this, and why should we listen to you?
Right.
And then he beats the living crap out of everybody around, and then the cop does everything Steve told him to say. So you're waiting for that moment from Sam.
That's
Okay.
maybe a great way to put it. I'm waiting for that moment where I see Sam really take action, really take charge, really make me feel like he deserves the shield. Like I
think
get why it was given
I think
to
we
him.
started to see it at the end of this episode. Sorry to interrupt you.
I do want to revisit this. So Frankie said, Bryan, earlier to your call about the nursery rhyme. Frankie said, in the nursery rhyme, they're keeping the wool for those who can pay a high price for it, not for those who could really need it, which is happening with the Flag Smashers, if that makes any sense.
Oh man, I'm like that meme where the guy like points at his temple. That's pretty good. Thank you, Frankie. That's a great.
Nice,
that's great. That's
Very
way
cool.
deeper than I even realized.
So
He
deep.
said he scored that one not on TikTok but on YouTube. And Frankie also just weighed in on Ethan's hot take. He says, "Uh-oh, look out, Ethan. Don't touch the MCU Michael Bay. So keep your explosions out my MCU, Michael."
Hey, we got plenty of explosions in the first episode, and we're gonna have more coming. Duane, Carly Morgenthau, and Sam Wilson. Anything you got there before we move on to Escape Artist Zemo?
Just real quick, I agree with what Markie Mark said. We brought it up earlier. I actually enjoyed that scene, and I think it just further gives you more background on Sam and who he is and the kind of person he is. So I enjoyed that. I think it also sets up, a couple of scenes that are still to come that we haven't talked about yet really well. So.
Well, with the help of Lamar Hoskins, they're able to talk down John Walker a little bit to give Sam 10 minutes. John Walker gets fed up. He even kind of gets into Bucky's mind a little bit, and Bucky kind of lets him go. But Mark Valentine, we're going to start with you. The escape artist Zemo slips right out of those handcuffs, and John Walker causes havoc, and then Zemo finds Carly Morgenthau.
There were elements of the episode that were they were telegraphed. I said this, I think, to Duane when I saw it.
Mm-hmm.
You could foresee them. The minute that she pulled out the fanny pack from the grave, I said, okay, one of these vials is going to fall on the floor. John Walker's going to get it. God knows who else is going to get it. Probably Zemo. There were elements that the minute that something would happen, it was so telegraphed that it was going to be undone. When he handcuffs him to that boiler, the millisecond that happened, I literally exclaimed to myself, like, you think that's going to hold Zemo? He's going to get away. And then there were 2 or 3 times in this episode that the man just got away. Despite that, I said to Duane, I felt that a lot of the episode, the outcome was very predictable once you got into those action sequences. Even still, it didn't bother me. I thought everything that was happening was really well executed. This is just going to be part of Zemo's personality. Like, Zemo is an escape artist. He's slimy. He's a slippery dude. He is, that's his superpower, is that you underestimate him and you think that because he's not super, that he's somehow less than, and Zemo will always subvert those expectations, and he'll beat you. He'll beat you at your own game.
Yep. I don't know why the serum. I'm with you. This was kind of a glimpse into what a lot of last week was for me, a lot of convenient storytelling. I don't know why the serum would be left unattended on a table like that. And then she would, like, it just didn't make a ton of sense. But to see Zemo being a man of his code, he may be slimy, he may be despicable, but he has a moral code and he's stepping all over it, literally. I think he was going to find that last vial if that shield didn't come in and knock him out cold. Moving on to the next topic. We find that vial of serum on the floor. John Walker finds that serum, and it follows us up with a pretty good conversation, actually, to me, of John Walker actually getting recognized out of costume, but John talking to Lamar Hoskins about, would you take the serum? Markie Mark, was there anything in that dialogue between those two that was of interest to you?
I knew at some point John Walker's moral compass was going to start to go. I knew at some point Battlestar was going to die. I did.
That caught me.
Oh, wow. Really? You called that?
That caught me off guard.
I didn't have that either.
I knew at some point, storytelling wise, he needed something to break him past that final point.
In the comics, it was his parents, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But my thing was, who is the only person that is constant? That woman in the beginning? We haven't seen her since. So Battlestar's been really the only moral compass he's had, who's talked him like down and things like that. I'm like, all right, so he's going to die at some point. Then when they had that chat, I was like, oh no, it is going to be him that dies, that breaks him. And when they had that talk, in my head, I was like, all right, they're probably going to end the episode with him dying, and then we're going to find out the repercussions. So I was a little late on it when it was going to happen. Spoiler. But that conversation, you also saw that neither one of those men, though they are good men who have done a lot of good things in military service, they're men. They're human. They want to do more. They had said, what if we had that when we were on our missions? Like, who's to say if that was bad of them to want it for those reasons? But just hearing that conversation, you could see that neither one of them is a saint. They had their motives for wanting it. They had their incentives. Obviously, none of them wanted it to be a major, athlete or anything like that. They wanted to do some good with that. But I honestly was surprised because it looked like John Walker had his doubts about it. He wasn't sold on taking it at first. I didn't think so. It wasn't until his sidekick was like, hell yeah, I would take it. Think about what we could accomplish with it and all that. And that's
I think it was hells yeah. I think is what he said.
Yeah. I didn't know what our rating was. So
I want to know what went down in Afghanistan, though. Did you not feel that way, Mark? Like with the when they were rehashing the 3 medals of honor?
I thought we were going to get that. I think we're still going to get that. I think it's going to be the next episode when they're laying into him and they're going to be like, do you think your past record? Like, I think we're going to get flashbacks by it. They made too much of a point of it to not. And I feel like some people might even say, oh, we don't want this taken away from our story, especially with only 2 episodes left. But I think we're going to get it. I'm excited for it. I know I'm rambling and you're catching me monologuing, but I think it was a good scene to set up both characters. You got closure on Battlestar to see what kind of person he was. And I'm not going to lie, that scene, when he died, it hurt. But I think if we didn't have that scene, I would have felt more sympathy for him. I don't know how that's going to paint me, but his death didn't hit me as hard just because of how that scene went.
Yeah, but every time we're discussing an on-screen death, you're always telling me that it's not as bad as it could have been, like
Yondu's
Goose and Yondu. But to Ethan's credit, a criticism I do have of this show is a lot of the times they are letting the dialogue do the talking rather than showing us. Carly Morgenthau, I don't think we're ever going to see anything from her past. They're letting the dialogue do the talking. So maybe with John Walker, they're going to do the same thing. So I think we'll see the Afghanistan stuff, but we might not. But I know we're jumping ahead a little bit. This conversation between Battlestar and I almost called him U.S. agent John Walker. It happens a little bit later, but to see John Walker even have the doubts of wanting to take it, but it shows Lamar Hoskins still believes in John Walker, which was really, really interesting because he seems to have found doubt quite regularly over the last couple of episodes, but he still believes in him. And ultimately he's what kind of pushes John Walker over the edge. I know we've got a friend of the podcast here, Bryan Ferguson. He said he wishes he had seen John Walker take that serum, and the way that it was revealed for me when he bent that pipe, I thought it was the perfect way to reveal.
We found out like Sam did. I loved it.
Yeah. So let's move on to our next topic, and I know we're going to talk about that Lamar Hoskins scene, death scene, a little bit later too. But Ethan, we'll start this one with you. This had to have worked for you. The Dora Milaje battle between John Walker and Battlestar, and just you're looking strong, John. Just all of that, like that scene. Oh man, awesome. Ethan, tell me this worked.
No, this worked. This was fun to see. This was more along the lines of what I would have hoped that like the next couple of scenes would have been about and brought into, because like the moment that they gave him like whatever it was, a 12-hour window or an 8-hour window, I was like, oh my God, what are we doing here? Like, let's go get this guy.
They're trusting him. That's what they were doing.
Yeah. Maybe.
The Dora Milaje have jurisdiction wherever the Dora Milaje find themselves to be.
It was great. It really was a fun scene. It was fun to see because this scene happened shortly after they talked about the serum, and you could tell that John Walker was at a point where he was like, man, they didn't even have the serum. If I had the serum, I'd be strong. I'd be able to deal with them. And, you can tell
he also did not enjoy getting his butt kicked by a woman. I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah. He definitely, his pride was hurt big time. And you could see,
they did.
Yeah. You could see like very deeply, within him, especially John, you could just tell that he was pissed. He was upset. And he lost, and he said, you know what? I don't want to lose anymore. What do I have to do to not lose? Because I think he's a sore loser. And that, to me, sort of at that moment, I said, oh man, if he gets his hands on serum, this guy's going to be bad news.
Mark Valentine, the Dora Milaje.
All right, so before I get into my CM Frankie says watching John Walker try to mansplain and touch Ao's shoulder, I thought, he is in trouble. Yeah, Frankie, good call on that.
Well said. Yeah,
I love that. Brian's a big fan of the scene. He says this is the best 30-second fight scene of the show. Patrick says fun scene. I love John's reaction at the end. They weren't even super soldiers. The dialogue in the scene, it was just dripping with contempt from John Walker that he had. It makes him, again, that much more unlikable. The contempt that he has for the Dora Milaje, that he calls them the pointy spears and the pointy sticks. There was only one line of this entire episode that landed for me from John Walker, where almost everything that comes out of his mouth, I despise. He had one quip in the middle of the fight with the Flag Smashers where he says, "What's with all the knives?" that I did snicker at a little bit. And it was the only thing that I think he's ever said that was somewhat funny or redeemable. Like when he speaks in the scene, it again just makes me realize how wrong that man is to be holding the shield. And that's why I knew once he took that serum that it was going to be a problem.
When she throws the spear through the straps into the table.
That was
that was
so
cool.
good.
Duane, the Dora Milaje.
Yeah, and I guess the part I want to talk about is, we were just talking about, him having the conversation with Battlestar Lamar about the serum. To me, this is the moment that he knew.
And chronologically, that conversation with Lamar actually happens after the Dora Milaje. Yeah. He's got it in his pocket during this battle.
This is the moment, though. To me, this is the moment when he knew that he was going to take the serum. He may have asked Lamar. He may have, gotten his thoughts on it. But I feel like the second he got his butt whipped, he got beat down, and we all saw it. And I think that's the moment when he was convinced, I'm taking the serum.
Yep.
So I loved that scene. And like Mark said, when Bucky's like, "Hey, you're doing great, John," I just busted out laughing. I was like,
"That's strong, John,"
because that is exactly. Literally,
Zemo's in the corner just sipping his whiskey.
Yeah, that's hilarious to me. I've been there. I feel like I've lived that scene before. I've been in places where something's going on and guys are doing just that same thing, laughing at two guys going at it. But I loved that whole scene. And then, as we move on, when Bucky, and Io are kind of going back and forth, and obviously neither one of them wanting to hurt the other, but by the same token, kind of sparring a little bit. And she hits him in the arm, and then hits him in the arm again, then hits him in the arm again. Then boom, the arm falls off. And I was like, okay. And then Sam asked him, he said, "Did you know that could happen?" No.
Well, and the way Bucky experiences all of that, not only did the Wakandans have a failsafe in case Bucky's mind ever went back into it, but the fact that Io then called him James, their entire relationship fell apart. Io let him keep the arm, which is actually surprising to me. But when she was hitting him like that, I just had flashbacks to Hot Rod, and when, if you know what I'm talking about, you know that scene. But Markie Mark, you didn't get a chance to talk about the Dora Milaje. I want to give you that chance.
I think I was happy to see us be reminded how badass they are. John Walker, I feel like each episode, it just shows how not suited for the role he is. I don't know if maybe they didn't debrief him on everything that's happened in the Avengers storylines,
or just what Wakanda is. Yeah.
And then going back to the serum, it was real lucky of him that it didn't get crushed while he was getting his butt kicked in his pocket there.
I was thinking about Into the Spider-Verse, where Miles has that USB chip in his pocket and he falls down. Yeah.
But we have to talk about when the one soldier, and if she has a character name, Bryan would have to know, but I love how everyone knows the right way to kick the shield up so that it ends up on your arm.
That was awesome. That was so cool.
When she does that, I'm like,
I do not know her name. I don't know if she has one.
I just fanboyed. I was like, and then when she was told to leave it, I thought she was gonna take it. I'm not gonna lie, it looked real good on her. I hope there's some fan artwork made of that image of her with the spear and the shield. I think it looked beautiful, looked great. And then when she just drops it, and you just see the look on his face of a little kid who lost their favorite toy, and it was given back
to the cosplay comparison. Huh?
Yeah.
Oh man, I don't even want to say that again because I feel like it's an insult to cosplayers. But that scene was great. You just see Sam and Bucky we're gonna watch this happen for a little bit for these guys to get a reality check. Oh crap, we should probably do something. We're the good guys, okay? And I loved everything about that scene. I think it'll be a scene that we definitely remember and talk about for a long time.
If you had told me before this show came out that my favorite two scenes were going to be Wakanda specific, I would not have believed it. But they are. Yeah. They are. I love the second episode, but these two scenes are really what made this episode for me. Well, let's move on. I believe the next topic is about Lamar and John. Oh no. Zemo he pulls a Loki with the Tesseract in Endgame. He just kind of sneaks out and he goes down, but he pulls the El Chapo. We talked about John Walker finding the serum, so we'll move on as well. So we get a scene that felt out of place to me. I will say it. It fulfills the storyline that they need of getting Carly back with Sam. But Duane, did this threat from Carly to Sam's sister work at all?
Yeah, it did for me. Again, I'm an apologist a little bit. I'm really in love with the show, and so I'll just be honest.
You or me with WandaVision, man. Everybody's going to come at you, and you've got something for everything. I love it. I love it.
That's okay. But Mark and I had a conversation about this because I maybe had a little different take on it than Mark did, and I think Mark's probably right. But we were talking about this scene and talking about her quote unquote her threat to Sarah. Hey, I'll find you on the dock. If you don't send it to Sam, or maybe I'll come visit you at the dock and your kids and the whole thing. And then when they meet again, she tells Sam right away, "Hey, I would never hurt your sister or kids." I, maybe being naive, was taking that kind of almost at face value. I felt like maybe there was more. I don't know. Maybe I'm giving Carly a little bit too much credit, like a redeeming quality. When Mark and I were talking about it, he said he believes 100% that she would go through with the threat.
Yeah, it's not bad.
I think we're going to see.
I'm with Duane. Like, I thought it was an empty threat.
I did too, and I think we may get the answer to that in the next episode, because I think we'll end up back probably there with Sarah, because Sam's got some unfinished business there, obviously. So who knows? We may see that a little more, but. I actually enjoyed that scene, and I felt it was okay. And I also liked. Well, I don't know if like's not the right word. I was interested by, and I'm interested here, maybe what a couple of you guys think about that moment when they're having that conversation, and then Sharon chimes in his ear, because obviously she was watching John Walker and he was en route, but tell me, you guys tell me, does that hold any significance to you? Does that solidify what you thought, about Sharon?
Yes, 100%. She was asked by Sam to keep an eye on John Walker, but ultimately John Walker is fulfilling the mission that the Power Broker wants and getting the serum back, getting Carly Morgenthau captured. There's the scene with Sharon on the phone. She's walking through barriers. Nobody's even touching her. Those barriers are up to keep people out, and she's walking right through them because she is. And she says the Power Broker was mad. He I will be 100% shocked if the Power Broker is anybody but Sharon Carter. But getting back to, so Mark, let's talk about that. You see that as an absolute threat, and now it could be, depending on how Sam treats this John Walker situation.
Here's the problem with I have. I think that she's very much corrupted by the serum. She accidentally kills Battlestar. Accidentally. It seems like all of these things, we're giving her too much credit. They happen, but then we're like, oh, she didn't mean to do it. She did mean to do it because she's been corrupted by the serum. Mm-hmm. They are the worst elements of her that are coming out again and again and again. And even in the conversation that she has with Sam, she is not completely in control of her thoughts. She is a ball of emotion, and she cannot control her actions. She just she has good intentions, but like Sam says, I agree with what you're doing, but the way you're going about it, I can't get with. She is 100%. She means what she says in that. She might regret it later, but in that moment when she threatens her, it was way too specific to be a veiled threat. She says, I'm going to come and get, and she names the children. Mm-hmm. She gives them names on the dock.
Yeah, Cass and Jaden, I think.
It's not like it was an idle threat of, I'll just come and find you in Louisiana. Right. She said, like, I'm going to come and get you on that dock. I'm going to come and get these two kids. You don't just say something like that if it's veiled. And all I have to say is, if Noob Master 69, if you have Carly Morgenthau on your case, you're going to get found quick.
Wade Wilson, Ryan Reynolds. Ethan, anything about this interaction between Sam and Carly this time, or the conversation Carly had with Sarah?
Yeah, there's only one language that they seem to understand. That is how I took this. I did take it as a true threat. I took her having the phone number, knowing the names, knowing the doc, knowing the location, I took that as,
She's
not
connected.
yeah, she's
Done her homework.
she's done her homework. She knows what she's doing. She's a lot smarter than she's maybe letting on. I think that she is compromised by the serum. There's definitely some vulnerability there, and she's open to talking and expanding upon her feelings and where her head is really at. But there's some confusion going on within not only, I think, her inner circle, because I don't have a real strong sense that she's even the real ringleader, but it's very interesting. But I did enjoy the fact that they brought in something to Sam, and I hope that this is the moment, or within these few moments, or within the next episode, that we'll get Sam really showing off what he's capable of in terms of being a leader, in terms of being the person that he is destined to be or should be. So
when I say I'm out on Carly Morgenthau, it is what Mark talked about of being overtaken by emotion and everybody making excuses for her, and then her, I think, legitimately trying to say she felt bad or didn't mean to pull it off or anything like that. But I have to assume we have some VIP comments talking about Carly Morgenthau. I would hope.
We do. So Frankie said she blew up those people with no problem. So I think absolutely she would go after Sarah if provoked. Bryan revisited the concept of the power broker. He believes that the power broker is Ross. And Patrick says, I still don't understand where John and Lamar were going in all of this, in a completely different area of the city when Carly was with Sam.
Ross being the power broker, Sharon Carter working for Ross, CIA connections, Ross and the Thunderbolts. Man, I don't hate it. I still think it's Sharon, but I could connect those dots. Markie Mark, anything on Carly here, other than when Carly and Sam are facing off and then all of a sudden they fly away and Carly's mask all of a sudden just appears on her face? That was super frustrating to me.
Yeah.
Markie Mark, anything you got here before we move on to the climax of the episode?
I did think the pacing for that was very clunky, where, all right, she threatens the sister, Sam organizes a couple things, they get suited up real quick, get to her, they have a chat about her threatening her sister, coming at him like that, and it was just quick, okay, oh nope, we're gonna fight, and then we're gonna get to John Walker. That felt like it didn't flow. I wish maybe the conversation had more depth when Sam could talk to her about her threatening his sister, but that didn't work for me. I think Carly is trying to still think of herself as a good person, but I think the reality of who she is now is coming out, and it's not a good person.
Yeah, the serum amplifies what's already there, so good becomes great, bad becomes worse. She's not Red Skull, but she's just got the same color hair. That's all I'm going to say. So I'm sorry, that was bad. So we've got John Walker. He has taken the serum, and like I said, some people, Brian Ferguson included, do not think, they wish they would have seen it. I like how it gradually kind of came on throughout this scene, and then the guy comes flying down the stairs, and then Walker bends that pipe. I think that was, and then that's when Sam realizes it too, and he says, "What did you do?" They have Lamar. Lamar's tied up. Lamar makes his way out. But I don't know. Like, we get the end of Lamar Hoskins, and Mark said he saw it coming. I didn't see it coming. I was hopeful for Lamar Hoskins after this series, and I mean, they could come in next week and say Lamar's like in a coma or something like that, which would make John Walker's actions even that much more horrifying, because it would have been a little premature.
I think that would
I think
cheapen
Lamar's
the moment
dead.
so much.
I think it would. I think it would too. But at the same time, if you have something that is what causes John Walker to snap, and it wasn't even worthy of that, it would be an interesting play. I do think Lamar Hoskins is dead.
No longer with us.
I think he's dead. But before we talk about that final scene, does anybody have anything on this battle in the building with Lamar's death?
So Bryan Ferg says he said earlier he doesn't know, is he dead? ? I do think he's dead. Mm-hmm. I don't think that we needed a like words there to pronounce him dead. I think the way that John reacts in that scene, his body language, the fact that we kind of see him expire or what looks like he expires, I think that was enough to infer that he's gone. Gone.
I assume he's dead as well. So
yeah, the classic like death like movement that he does was a little
the last head drop.
A little too dramatic for me, but overall,
you're not the death wasn't as sad as it could have been, guy. That's below you.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to get a lot more TikTok memes out of that death sequence than we got.
It's only been like 36 hours, so
I called Duane. I was sure that we were going to get the audio that brother gone, that one. I thought we were going to get that one a lot with him.
You're a horrible human being. Speaking of horrible human beings, let's wrap it up with the final shot of this episode. We get John Walker. He has blood on his hands. He has blood on his shield. It was 100% intended to look just like that scene from Civil War when Tony is using when Steve is using the shield in the same manner when he is fighting against Tony. And he looks like he's going for Tony's head, and Tony covers it, and he takes out the arc reactor of the suit because Steve knows how to control his emotions. John Walker does not. We see an entire group of dozens and dozens of people with Carly Morgenthau just out in the open.
Sitting around.
But bystanders not doing anything to help the man?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't have jumped in either. I will say that right now. But
they were all filming.
Camera phones galore of seeing this symbol and this man just it's tainted. That final shot we get with the camera angle up, making him just standing like a goon. He looks like straight out of The Walking Dead. Let's wrap up our final thoughts on the episode. Start with Mark Valentine.
Is the shield? So here's what I, as I watched that scene, here's what I thought to myself. Number one, it was brutal. Is the shield going to get pulled from him? Is he going to go from being Captain America to being U.S. agent after this? Because of the blowback that has to come. Like you can't have that scene play out. People are taping. It's a bad look for the government. It's a bad look for Captain America.
Disagree completely.
Secondly, I think that this is now a big event for Sam to realize there's only one way that shield can be redeemed, and it's got to go to the right person. And so I think that this is going to be the beginning of the realization for Sam to realize, like, I have to take the shield. There's only one guy that can restore the shield at this point. I have to be. It's sad that I love that icon. I love it. And for me to see the blood on that shield, it hit home. That shield is stained, literally, figuratively. It has been diminished as a symbol because of what was done. There's only one guy now that can redeem that shield for me, and it is Sam.
When I say I disagree, I wholeheartedly agree with that. They have to remove the shield from him. But I think where it's headed is the government's going to try to save face, and they're going to take it from him. And you're going to have a lot of people saying that the government was wrong, because who did he kill? He killed a flag smasher terrorist who had just blown up a GRC building. Yep. And I think you're going to have a big political argument that's going to come out of this. And I think that that's where it's headed. I think the government's going to try to save face and take the shield from him. I don't think he's going to play nice. And I think you're going to have plenty of the population that believe that John Walker did the right thing. It's not going to be black and white.
Yeah, the comments are blowing up.
No pun intended.
No, the comments are blowing up right now as we're talking about this. Brian says, finally, another anti-hero. Frankie says that scene is going to be forever ingrained within the MCU, and killing a guy who admired Captain America. Brian,
they didn't know that, but yeah.
Brian, when Deadpool kills someone bad, it's okay. Sam has earned it, though. He says there is no doubt about that. And then Esther was fanning hard. Now she stands for Deadpool. She says Deadpool all the way.
Duane, how did you experience this scene?
It was shocking. I think it was probably the easy to me. I mean, I knew there was going to be, a big climax to that whole fight and everything else. But, and when I say shocking, the death was, it was dark. He just, 3 and 4 times, he's jamming that shield through him. And when they show John Walker and he's got blood over his ear by the helmet and blood all over, and the guy's hand flops over with the blood, and he's, it was shocking. And it literally, obviously the title of the episode, The Whole World Is Watching. That's the other thing, like you said, everybody's standing around, everybody's got their phones out. Carly's standing out in the open, staring with her eyes bugged out, Sam and Bucky roll up and they see it. It was just, the other thing was, like Mark said, the shield itself, the icon of the shield. Then they do that cut, and it's not just, not to be graphic, but it's like chunky, like the blood. You know what I mean? It's like,
it's a nasty, gory,
situation. It's like chunky blood on the shield, and it did exactly what it was meant to do. It was shocking, it was dramatic, and it sets us up for these last 2 episodes to me to be great.
Ethan.
All right, I'm gonna find the good in this episode, and this was probably the moment that I sort of foresaw coming. I did think that this Captain America was going to show his true colors. This was definitely it. The music that went along with him, John just sort of going to this clinically insane moments and killing this man, really just build up the sort of. I think of movies like Psycho and Jaws, where you have this big moment and all of a sudden this music just sort of hits you. So the music was phenomenal. The acting, I don't know. There's still something about him and wearing that costume, wearing the shield, that just doesn't sit well with me. So it's just so different. It's so
me neither. If it makes you feel better.
Well, that's good. But
could be by design.
Yeah, and I think maybe that's exactly it, Duane. I think it very well could be. It's very off-putting. It's very strange, and again, I hope that someone like Sam, who was chosen, I hope that he sees this and goes, man, I messed up. I need to step up and be. And I said it before, but he needs to be the leader. So, intense scene. I think they could have done a little bit more. I thought, it was dark, but I think it could have been darker because I definitely like the moment.
Spoken as a man who doesn't have to watch this with children.
I need to see brains.
Ethan, can I introduce you to the DC universe? Will that help?
Well, Game of Thrones did a great job with stuff like that.
Markie Mark, I'm going to give you the final word.
I don't think Sam is Captain America yet. I think he saw the scene and definitely is like, the shield doesn't belong. It doesn't belong to me, but it doesn't belong to them or who them are who decide who needs to have it. So I think Sam right there, it definitely clicked with him finally that he's the only one who can really be trusted with the shield. I don't believe he's had that Captain America click just yet. But let's not forget when the one Hydra agent shot Bucky on the train, Steve Rogers didn't go on a killer rampage on the train and kill all of Hydra. He didn't forget who he was inside. So right there was a difference between the two men. Bryan, you did. That is a good point that you made, that who did he actually kill? It's as the U.S. government sees as terrorists. So Captain America killed a terrorist. So why? I think they will say, hey, maybe our practices weren't the best, but we are here to stop the flag smashers from causing more harm. They are the true criminals here. They are not the victims. These people have killed other people. They can definitely spin it. I didn't think about that. I thought it was like a slam dunk that, oh man, now he's going to lose the shield for sure. But I think Bryan's right. The government could easily, I mean, let's face it, the American people could be easily swayed to see that, is he really a bad guy in this situation? So I hate that it's a question now, but man, Bryan, you planted that seed, and I'm going to mentally prepare myself for the next episode where they maybe secretly tell him, like, seriously, for this bad PR, but they don't demote him just yet. I think Bryan's got a point.
Well, we get that answer next week. We've got 2 episodes left of this show. I think we're going to get a little more action that Ethan wants. I do hope Batroc the Leaper makes a return least at some point in the show. Joaquin Torres, this was the first episode. His name was never mentioned or voice never heard, so we've still got a lot still going on. And the Sharon Carter power broker reveal. I think it's all still coming. So we got 2 weeks left. We want to thank the VIPs in our chat tonight. Again, if you want to be one of those VIPs, these tape recordings could be a little more common in the future. If you want to be part of it, join this Diz Life group on Facebook. There's a lot of fun conversations that happen in there. We want to thank everybody for joining us. Duane, our special guest tonight, and the rest of the weirdos, the Wolf of Main Street, Ethan, Markie Mark from United We Fan, my co-host, and Mark Valentine. Gentlemen, for the children.
For the children.
For the children.